Hey everyone, I'm Kim, the mom boss behind EmeryandK. Welcome back to my channel. Today's tumbler tutorial is this really awesome V-split-esque tumbler. There is no measuring required. I promise this is so simple. I will list and link everything I use in the description box below. I'll have some discount codes down there for you as well. Let's get to it. As always, I'm starting with a fully prepped tumbler. So this one actually isn't painted. I just gave it a light sand. This is a 20-ounce skinny from the Stainless Depot. Then for our printed vinyl today, we're going to be using these beautiful purple flowers. This is called the Fuschia Florals. It's from the Glitter Guy. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just take your scissors, or you can use a scrapbook cutter, it doesn't matter, and just cut off any like white edges that you might have on your vinyl. Now, as promised, there is no measuring required to get this V-split tumbler. So I don't know who did this strategy first, but I saw Rustic Passion Studio on TikTok do this first. She folded and cut her vinyl and did this really cool like diamond wrap thing on her tumbler. It was awesome. But if you like hand-painted florals, go check out her TikTok. Anyhow, I'm going to take it a little bit further, and we're going to do a really cool kind of take on a V-split, I guess. So the first thing we're doing is folding our vinyl diagonally one way and then the other way. So we end up with 4 triangles, and these are all equal. So it doesn't matter which one you cut off and use, any of them will be fine. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut one of these triangles out of my vinyl. I feel like I will forever be apologizing for my melon being in the screen when I am cutting things or pinstriping. So sorry about that, but you guys know what I did. I just cut along the lines. So now I've cut my vinyl in half and I have 2 triangles. Now I'm just going to cut down that center line to make the 2 triangles separate. Go ahead and slide aside, grab another, it doesn't matter which one, and we're just going to wrap it around our tumbler. So to do this, it's really super simple. I am going to line it up with the top edge of my tumbler. I like to have it pulled down just a touch from the very top, so there's a little bit of stainless still, because I want my epoxy to grip to the tumbler, not to my vinyl. So I'm just going to hold this with one hand, and then I'm going to struggle here a little bit because this is real life. But I'm going to pull back one little corner of my vinyl. I'm going to grab some scissors and just cut off, like an inch or so of that backing. And I will go ahead and lay that on my tumbler. And then wrapping this around your tumbler is incredibly simple. I like to use a vinyl squeegee, and you'll see here I'm just going to kind of flip my vinyl up. And you don't even have to pull on the backing when you are like sticking your printed vinyl around your tumbler. It really just slides off the backing. It's super simple. The biggest thing is just make sure that there are no little stray specks of glitter or fuzzies that get under your vinyl that will cause you to have little bumps. If you end up with any little bubbles in your vinyl, just like air bubbles, you can gently pop them with your weeding tool and push the air out and nobody will notice it. So go ahead and make sure that's pressed on really well. Now, if you wanted to, you could leave this tumbler as a simple V-split. So now what you're going to do is grab the piece of backing from that piece of vinyl we just laid on our tumbler. So I had cut mine in half just to make sure this would work before I did it, but just pretend my piece is whole. And what I did is I just folded it again diagonally, so those 2 points I folded so they met, and then I trimmed it down the middle. So I cut that triangle into 2 smaller triangles like this, except it would be the backing, not my extra piece of vinyl. So then the piece that has the cutoff, I'm just going to toss. Then this smaller vinyl piece, or the smaller backing piece, excuse me, we're going to use as a template to cut another piece of vinyl. So again, as promised, there is no measuring required. So I'm going to take this piece of backing, I'm going to line it up with the bottom of my printed vinyl here, and I'm going to just eyeball it. You can measure if you want to, but I don't really think that you need to. Just eyeball it to make sure that it's centered so that each side of the vinyl is equal. Make sure your points line up nicely, and then I'm just going to throw a little piece of tape on here, and I will trim using this piece of backing as a stencil. I was going to skip over the cutting part in the tutorial, but I'm pretty proud of myself seeing now that I didn't have my giant melon in the way. So just wanted to leave this in here for a quick second, but go ahead and trim your stencil and then we'll lay it on our cup. Now that you've trimmed your stencil, you're going to just set the piece of backing and the little triangle aside. Don't crinkle them up because we're going to use them. Now we are going to take this cool like V piece that we made here, and we're going to lay it on our tumbler. Just make sure that you carefully remove that little piece of tape that you held your stencil on with. That's what I'm doing here. And so now to put this on our tumbler, you can really do whatever you want as far as distance wise, right? Your craft room, your rules. For me, I knew I wanted to have a little bit, but not too much. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. I think I ended up with a little bit less than an inch. Like I said, I didn't measure measure it. If you want to measure it, you certainly can. But I'm just going to eyeball this and make sure that I get it on my tumbler straight. You want to make sure that the points are lined up here, so you can kind of put them together and then carefully slide it down. And here I'm just kind of showing, like I said, you can do as large or as small of a space as you want in between. Totally up to you. So I'm going to get this to a point where I like it, and then I'm going to tape it onto my tumbler. So I just put a little piece of tape there in the center point, and now we're going to turn our tumbler over here, and we're going to put our little strips, make sure they line up, that your point matches with the other point. I feel like I'm saying point a lot, but it's essential here. So it's similar to how I did this larger piece. I'm just going to hold it in place with my hand. I'm going to fold back one of the corners, it doesn't matter which side, and I'm going to go ahead and trim a little piece of that backing off there. And then we'll start to wrap this around our tumbler. You just saw there, I'm just double checking, making sure everything is still lined up, because once you get your vinyl on, you can adjust it a little bit as you go, but for the most part, you want it to, you know, be adhered to where you want it. So now I'm just taking my vinyl squeegee, and the same thing as with that large piece, you really don't even need to pull your backing at all. I did end up trimming that extra piece of backing off here at the point, just so I could make sure that I got everything lined up. I didn't want any wrinkles, and then I carefully trimmed it one more time, just double check that you're not getting your vinyl. And then you have your whole thing wrapped around. Now I'm just going to take an X-Acto, and I'm just going to trim the little extra like corner pieces off, if that makes sense. You can see that I'm doing here. So I like to kind of just push the seam with my nail so I can see it really well, and then carefully trim it with your X-Acto knife, and then you'll be ready to move on to another V on this tumbler. And again, sorry about my melon here. Why is my melon always in the screen when I do this stuff? All right, so now we're going to work on the final split for this tumbler. Now I am going to grab that piece of backing that we used to cut the second split, and I'm going to repeat the process as I did before. So I'm going to fold this in half, match the corner to corner here. So I'm going to fold it into 2 triangles, then we'll trim it down the middle, and we will use one of those triangles as a stencil to create the final split. So once again, we're going to take our little template here that we made from our backing, and we're doing the same exact thing as we did before. So I'm lining it up on the bottom, making sure it's straight, making sure that the points are lined up, and that the vinyl on each side of the triangle is as even as I can get it. Like I said, I'm not measuring it, I'm eyeballing it. If you want to measure it and that makes you feel more comfortable, then you absolutely can do that. So I'm just going to tape that on, and we're going to trim around our template. Now that we've trimmed our template, we have again our thinner, like hollow V split. That's what I'm going to call it. And then the inner triangle. So go ahead
now,
and
I did go ahead and
tape
part
just
of the
like
tutorial
before,
up because
and
I
then
feel
we'll
like
apply
once you've
both of
gotten,
these
like, the
onto our
general
tumbler. Concept of how to do this, you don't have to see it like in real time, and I don't want this tutorial to be super long. So anyhow, to apply this piece of vinyl, we're going to do exactly the same thing we did with the second section here. I'm going to line up the points, make sure that each like silver space on my 2 sides is even, and then we will go ahead and apply our vinyl to our tumbler. Once you have that piece of vinyl on, go ahead and take your X-Acto knife and just trim around the bottom. We will end up taping and glittering, so don't worry if it's not perfect. Just do your best straight trim around the bottom there. All right, now we're going to grab that very last extra piece of vinyl that we had, and we're going to fold that one in half like we did with the backing, but we don't need a template this time because we're going to use the whole triangle. So fold that corner to corner. You're going to trim into 2 triangles, choose the one that you like the print on best, and then you're going to apply it to your tumbler. So I'm trying to keep my silver spaces between my pieces of vinyl pretty even, so I'm going to do that on this one as well. So I'm just going to line it up, I will apply it to my tumbler, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and trim around the bottom just like I did with all of my strips. Once all the vinyl is laid on, we're going to go ahead and tape it off so that we can paint and glitter. So I prefer to use electrical tape when taping off my tumblers. If you like painter's tape, go ahead and use that. Your craft room, your rules, does not matter to me. All you want to do is tape off your vinyl so you don't get paint all over it. Now, don't worry too much about these lines being exact and perfect. We're going to end up pinstriping, so not a big deal. Now, I want to go in and make sure I trim around the bottom because we're going to glitter the bottom as well. And then you can either tape a piece of paper over that big piece of vinyl on the top, or you can just go in with like a larger painter's tape, masking tape, whatever you have on hand, whatever you want to use. So once we're done taping this off, we'll go ahead and grab our spray paint. For paint today, we're going to be using Aromatherapy and Center Stage. These are both from Color Shot. Make sure you shake them up really well so you can get really good solid coverage with just one coat. So I find the Color Shot paints have a lot more overspray than Rust-Oleum, so I like to hold my can like 10 to 12 inches away from my tumbler. I like to constantly have it in motion so I'm not getting like weird little bloops of paint. So I start with the Aromatherapy, just kind of aiming for that bottom rim, and then doing a twirl around the cup, and then I'm going to go in with the Center Stage. Repeat the process, but just go from the top. And then once I'm done with Center Stage, I'll go back in one more time with that Aromatherapy. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect by any means. The glitter we're using is a fusion, and it is super forgiving. So you just want to have like a basic fade. Don't stress about it if it's not perfect. It's totally fine. It's going to be beautiful in the end. The glitter we're going to be using today is called Wisteria Lane. This is one of their fusions, so it's a hand mixed exclusive to them. It is an absolutely beautiful purple, and like I said, it's a super forgiving glitter, so don't worry if your ombre is not absolutely perfect. So we're going to apply our glitter using the epoxy method, and I'm going to be doing a thin coat of epoxy on this tumbler. I'm going to do a little bit thicker than I would do like for a hang method because this is a fusion glitter and it has medium cut in it. I want it to lay nice and flat so I can get one coat coverage. So I'm doing a little bit more than I typically would for the epoxy method, and then I will let this cure on my turner. So just go in, take your time, there's no rush here, and just make sure you get really good solid coverage with your epoxy here in all your stripes, and don't forget to do the bottom of your tumbler. To glitter our tumbler, it's as easy as pouring our glitter right on those spots where we just put epoxy. Because we did an ombre spray paint, once we epoxy over this, it's going to look like we ombre'd the glitter, kind of like a little hack, which I love doing. It makes doing an ombre super simple. And so now once our glitter is on, we want to immediately remove our paper and our tape. You can set a timer if you want like 15-20 minutes, but you want to make sure you remove all of this tape before your epoxy cures. So for me, I just do it immediately because I always seem to forget. You can see I'm just using my weeding tool here to pull up a corner of my tape a piece at a time, and I'm just carefully pulling it off. Now, could you have ombre'd this and glittered it and epoxied it and then done your vinyl? Sure. I wanted to do it this way so that my ombre was set up exactly how I wanted it. I got a really good fade with all my vinyl, so I did it this way, but the extra effort was totally worth it. You can already see the ombre and that glitter coming through. It is absolutely beautiful. So now we'll go ahead, let that cure. We will do a coat of our spray sealer and then a coat of epoxy, and once it's smooth, we'll move on to pinstripes. For my pinstripes today, all of my vinyl is from TeckWrap. This is their textured silver, and I did these pinstripes 11.5 by 0.07, and then I used their holographic or their bubble-free mirror chrome in purple iris and camouflage olive, and I cut those 11.5 by 0.05. So pinstriping this tumbler, I'm taking some inspiration from Kim Hobbs. She does these really cool tumblers with like all the pinstripes, and I've always thought they're beautiful but very intimidating, but I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to do. So first, we're going to start with our textured silver, and I'm just going to put that on the edges of all of my purple. And you can see while I'm pinstriping, I like to hold on to the edge of my pinstripe and kind of roll my tumbler. You can see right here, and just lay the vinyl like where it falls almost. And I find that this makes my pinstripes nice and straight versus having like a bunch of waves. If I hold my vinyl too close to where I'm laying it, I get like a lot of waves in it, if that makes sense. So here I'm just going to line these up right on the point, and again you can see I'm holding that vinyl super close to the edge, rolling my tumbler and just letting it lay where it may, and then we're going to overlap it here on the seam and then trim it so it makes a little V, and I'm going to repeat this process until I've outlined all of my silver stripes, and then we'll move on to the colors. Now, here's where I just kind of get a little bit creative, and you can kind of follow what I do, or you can do whatever you want. I'm just kind of going with the flow here. So we're starting out with the purple, and you can see I just lined that up with the edge of the silver, and I'm just pulling it up along. I'm going to go to the edge of my tumbler here and trim it. I wasn't sure if I wanted my line to go all the way up or if I wanted to trim it at that split so that it matched the silver, if that makes sense. And you can see here I'm just repeating. So now there's like a little diamond there in the center, and again just going up to the rim of my tumbler, trimming it, and I'm just kind of seeing the feel and what I think of it. And that's basically what I did the entire time I was pinstriping this tumbler. So like I said, you can kind of follow along and do what I do, or you can just lay your pinstripes however you want. I feel like it was much easier to just kind of be creative here and not get into my own head too much as far as what I was doing with these. And so I ended up leaving that big V at the top. I really liked it. And now we're going to repeat the process with our purple for the next set of stripes. Does this make sense? We're going right underneath the silver that we just did, and we're going to repeat the process. So I'm lining it up with the opposite stripe. The only thing I'm really concerned about here is keeping the distance between this purple iris stripe and the textured silver the same as the other. And so you can see here, I just went down to the other set. Again, just kind of going with the flow, and as I'm going along, I'm making decisions on I like this, it's aesthetically pleasing, or I don't like this, I'm going to change it up. So I'm going to repeat this process on the other side. I did end up trimming these purple ones so that they would form a V underneath that silver just because I thought it looked better. Cue my melon being in the screen here. So I just trimmed those the same way I did the silver ones, just where they overlap so they would make a little V. And again, like I said, if you want to leave it the way that we had it before, you totally can, or you can trim it. It's up to you. I feel like with these pinstripes, like I said, just go with the flow and see what you think. So now I'm going to go below this next piece of glitter, or glitter section I'm going to call it, and repeat the process with that purple. So I'm going to make that cute little diamond in the middle here. We're going to go right to the bottom. We're going to trim it right where it meets that glitter, and then we will repeat the process one more time under this third section of glitter. Now, if you are looking at this and thinking, this is too many pinstripes, you don't have to do this many, but I promise this little bit of extra effort really just amps up this tumbler and makes it just, it takes it to a whole nother level, which I love. So now we're going to do the green pinstripes, that camouflage olive. I'm going to do that at the top of the glitter sections. And so you can see I started right at the bottom of my tumbler. I went up and I actually brought it all the way up to the silver. I did end up going back through and trimming it at the top of the point, if that makes sense. You'll see here in just a second, because I decided I wanted it to be like a clean V to match that silver. I feel like I keep saying this, but again, just do what you think looks pretty. There really is no right or wrong. This is art, and we each have our own way of doing it. So I'm going to do that on the top of that one, and then I will do it on the top of the other set here, and I did it along the bottom as well. Literally the same process as I did for the first green one, and then the green under that third section of glitter, I did the same as I did for the purple. I just made the little diamond here. I'm doing the same thing on the top section. I'm going right over that purple. I'm trying to keep the distance between this camouflage olive and the purple iris the same as the purple iris and the silver, if that makes sense. I think it does. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. And so now I'm going to take this camouflage olive all the way up to the rim of my tumbler, just like I did with that purple iris. If at any point watching this you find yourself overwhelmed with the thought of doing all these pinstripes, please don't let that deter you from trying this. I've said it a few times. I'm going to say it again. Just be creative and do whatever you want. There is no right or wrong way to make art. Once I have all of my pinstripes on my tumbler, I am going to go around the bottom, and I'm going to use one of those pieces of silver that I have left and just do a line between the bottom and that glitter section on my tumbler. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and do my final 2 coats of epoxy, and my tumbler will be completely finished. I did add, you guys know, some grape ice mica powder into my final coat of epoxy from the glitter guide to give it a perfect little purpley sparkle, and I am obsessed with the outcome. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, maybe a little bit inspirational. If you did, I would love a thumbs up on my video. If you want to see more tutorials in the future, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, happy crafting.